Mendoza is an American business executive and public speaker. He is a former president and vice chairman of NetApp. NetApp is an American data storage and data management services company headquartered in San Jose, California. It is ranked in the Fortune 500 from 2012 to 2021. Founded in 1992 with an IPO in 1995, NetApp offers cloud data services for management of applications and data both online and physically. Tom helped establish the culture that allowed NetApp to be ranked #1 in Fortune magazine's 100 Best Companies to Work For in 2009, as well as being a co-recipient with NetApp CEO Dan Wermanhovenoff of the Morgan Stanley Leadership Award for Global Commerce. Now, the first time the award has been co-presented to two individuals, and he retired from NetApp in 2019, holds a BA from Notre Dame, and is an alumnus of the Stanford Executive Program. In September 2000, Notre Dame named their business school the Mendoza College of Business after an endowment from Tom and his wife, who gave $35 million for that. So Tom grew up in Long Island, attended Notre Dame on a wrestling scholarship. His parents were the children of immigrants as well, and his father's father was from Cuba, his mother from Ireland. And he has a great story to tell. And your dad also enlisted in the Navy,
yes.
Where I was just at the Navy football game over the weekend. Yes. So great to hear about that. So Tom, Notre Dame to being one of the founders of NetApp, explain that journey.
When I got out of Notre Dame, I got in technology kind of by chance, but once I got into it, I realized it's a very broad field. It never is static, so I thought this was cool. Number one. Number two, selling was what I like solving problems. So it's not just selling somebody transactionally. I like taking the time to understand someone's problem, taking technology, applying it to solve it. So that was the second one. And after the first 8 years, I think was a paid MBA. I worked for 3 companies. I got into leadership at 26. I've always felt if you either give a plaque or get a plaque is the only question about leadership. When I got to give a plaque, it was much more of a rush than when I got a plaque. Been in leadership ever since. Did my first startup 1982. 8.5 years later, my boss was the guy who was the first CEO of Cisco Systems. Cisco sits on John Morgridge Way, that's my boss. 8.5 years as a startup, but I already knew what I was doing. A lot of people jump right into a startup. They don't train you. So one startup, Stanford into NetApp basically, and then 25 years at NetApp from 0 to 6 billion. It's been pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, well, and you were kind of right at the beginning of the internet age.
Yes.
So how did you foresee that was going to be a revolutionary thing, the internet?
You know, it's funny, when I went to Stanford, a guy who ran engineering at my previous company said, "Tom, do you think you're going to come up with the next great idea in tech?" And I said, "No." He says, "I don't either." So,
good friend of yours.
There you have it, yeah. And he goes, "But the guy who does is going to want to know you. And you're going to Stanford, why don't I introduce you to the top 6 venture capitalists in the world? They will want to know you because they're going to be looking at that tech, but you know how to bring it to market," which is kind of what I've done. That changed my life, because rather than me try to pick the company, and so in each case, I listened to what they were investing and where they thought the market was going. And between 85 and 90, you already had a revolution where instead of selling a big computer to somebody, Intel had come along and taken the chip business, Oracle took the database, Microsoft took the operating system. Now Cisco made it so you could have big pipes. What that meant was the data, instead of sitting in a room, now could spread everywhere and you could get at it. Well, how do you store it? And all 5 were saying the next big thing will be how do you store it? And then 3 of them had invested in a company called Auspex, and they said, "We'd like you to come in and help run that." And that's how I ended up starting there. I spent 3 years there. The 2 geniuses who started eventually started NetApp, and I went with them. And one of the things they said to me was, the culture you built in sales was tremendous, not the company culture. Right. We would love to build a company culture based on positive things, if I could cut it short, based on having people come through because they want to come through, because they feel motivated, because they feel appreciated. And that's basically what started me with them.
Yeah.
You and culture seem synonymous, right?
Thank you.
And I'm passionate about that, and this show is all about leadership.
Yeah.
Culture is kind of hard to define. You feel it though. How do you intentionally drive culture, especially in a large organization like NetApp?
We did something different at the beginning, which set it up for the whole ride. So Dan Wormenhoven joined as CEO. There's two founders, Dave Hitz and James Lau, me and Dan, that kind of drove the company all those years. And Dan joined in November, I joined in May, and we had our first offsite. And he said, what is it we're going to stand for? What's the mission? And usually when you get in that room in a business conversation, they talk about revenue, EBITDA, maybe what list you want to make. After 2 days and a lot of interesting discussion, we said, we want to create and build a company we're proud of the rest of our lives. That's it.
Repeat that for me.
We want to create and build a company we're proud of the rest of our lives. And so how that played out, Matt, was somebody wants to promote somebody. Well, I want to promote Matt. Are you proud of Matt? The answer is yes, but that's the end of the conversation. If the answer is, well, he's really good at his job, I'm not sure I'm proud of him. Really? Why is that? Well, he doesn't do the, look, before you talk about promoting him, go have that conversation with Matt. You owe it to this organization to look left and right, every employee, and be proud. That's how great teams do it. When you played for North Carolina, you looked left and right, and you would sacrifice for each other because you were proud.
I get goosebumps when you're talking about that.
That's because I brought up North Carolina.
It starts at the top, but it's finding the talent, right? And then onboarding it to that vision, mission, philosophy.
That's right.
How'd you do that? How'd you find the talent? How'd you onboard it?
Find it, onboard it, and measure against it. When you evaluate people, you evaluate it on what you believe your culture is. I used to give talks all over the world for the company. I never flew under 250,000 miles, my first commercial miles, my first 20 years. 375 my last year as president. And my only requirement was I was going to talk to the team about culture, because we grew from 0 to $1 billion in 6 years. 250 to $1 billion in 2. Well, I hired people that I met in the hallway. I said, who do you work for? You. Oh. I talked to them on the phone. We were going fast.
Yeah.
So it was important to me that we could say what the culture is. I'll do it very quickly. 5 things we cared about. Number 1 is attitude. Nothing great's ever been done by someone who didn't want to do it. You don't want to be here? Go. You think it's a better place for you and your family? Do it. Number 2, candor. Candor has to come from the top. You have to really, Matt, tell me what you think. And you, regardless of title, if you disagree in a closed room, you have to say it, or I don't need you in that room. Mm-hmm. But if you say, I'm just not comfortable with the plan, okay, one of us will go at it. I still have to make the decision, but if everybody says what they need to say, the best ideas are going to come from people close. Mm-hmm. I want when they go home, I don't want them on a bike thinking about their kids. I want them, well, sorry about that. What I do want them thinking about is how can I help the company tomorrow? If I come up with an idea, they'll listen to me. Mm-hmm. So candor was very, very important to us. The third, I started saying, catch someone doing something right. Mm-hmm. Bill McDermott from ServiceNow, he called me and said, how do you find the time? Because I made 10 calls per day on average to thank somebody. I said to our organization, if you see somebody do something extraordinary to help NetApp, to help a customer, to help a partner, to help society, if you send me a note, I'll call them. And I called every day. On average, 10 a day, Mike. And I would say, Matt, Tom Mendoza. Matt be like, oh, geez.
Okay, what I
I was sitting on the
felt like I was called into the principal's office.
Yeah, exactly. I go, and this is good news. Because they're always like, and I say, Matt, I heard what you did last night. We had a situation. There was a marketing lady down in Houston. A guy called me and said, 2 days in a row she ran seminars. Usually they only notice if the coffee's cold or something. But she said, at the end of the day, she loaded all the food in her van. The second day, I said, you must have a big family. She said, I'll take it to a homeless shelter. I said, that's why we're here. We're here to make the world a better place. NetApp's the vehicle to do it. Mm-hmm. But thanking people, you can't do it enough. Cost you nothing. Mm-hmm. Bill McDermott said, how do you find the time? I said, Bill, the calls are probably a minute.
Okay.
Because of that, they're like, and many times they'll call me back. And I view it as viral culture building because people always say, why do you call you? And those stories permeated the company. Oh. So the fourth one is leadership. I look for leadership rather than management, not meaning you can't manage, that's the baseline. Mm-hmm. But leadership's different. Leadership of people who want the ball, leadership of people who other people want to follow. Mm-hmm. If you turn around, if you're a leader, nobody's following, you're not leading. So, leadership. Yeah. And the last one, I think leadership has 2 key aspects, aspiration and inspiration. No one will aspire higher than you. You better be shooting high. And the concept of inspiration, I spoke at West Point 2009, And I was thinking about it on the way there. I just come from Stanford, and I thought two different crowds. But 32 people that were selected by the West Point as the next great generation of leaders. They were with Secretary Gates the day before. I was the first outside speaker they ever brought in to get a non-military view. And as I was going there, I was thinking about inspiration. It's offered the least when it's needed the most. It's offered the most when it's needed the least. When you've won, you won a title, everybody calls you. After the second call, it's like, yeah, I got it. Maybe you have more to do. Inspiration is when you're hurting, you're playing hurt. Someone in your organization, maybe I overgold them, maybe they have a sick person at home that's really taking their energy away. Somebody calls me and said, hey, Matt could really use a lift. That's the call I want to make. People to this day, I'll get notes saying, you called me in 1997, you called me in 1999, when you needed it, not when I was on top. I did call when they're on top, but the ones they remember are that. And the last part is embracing change. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're staying the same, you're getting worse. So I would end meetings all the time and say, what are you getting better at? What are you trying to get better at? I want you to drive that, not me. So those 5 things together, collectively, what our culture was about. And I would say it, and if you're the right person coming in, you feel like you came home. You don't have to change your behavior. You're going, I've been looking for somebody who's going to be, my dad made every Little League game I had. He was a traveling salesman. It was not easy for him to do it, but he made every event that I did. My brother was 2 years older, better athlete, all-state and different things. So he felt he was okay. He worked with him, but he coached my teams. I just didn't want to let him down. And I felt as a leader, you have to earn the right to have people feel that way about you. It's not because they give you a title. I don't care what. Sports, Army. West Point people understood this. You earn the right for people to look at you as a leader.
Culture, we talk about it. We want to drive culture. It takes time. Nowadays, everybody wants to measure things, metrics. How do you measure effective culture?
I don't like that. And I've talked to a school, and I got involved with a school my son was going to in Miami, and I was helping mentor the new president, and they were trying to measure culture. They had all these charts and stuff. And I said, listen, think about what you want this culture to be and say, are they a good representative of that or not? You know they are. You don't have to put it in boxes. So in our case, when we would talk about best employees, who should we keep an eye on moving forward? We wanted people that other people looked up to. We wanted people that would sacrifice for each other. At the ultimate, that's a word you don't hear much in business. Sacrifice. You don't do anything great without sacrifice. Sacrifice by not being at home. Sacrifice by missing your son's game because it was important for that particular day. If you're willing to sacrifice for each other, other people will sacrifice for you, and there are people who take you along. So when we interviewed, I always told people, look, this is not going to be easy. When does it get easy? Never. We're going to keep lifting what we think we can do, but I'll tell you, we'll never lie to you. If you need help, we're going to be there for you, but we expect you to put everything into this company. Somebody asked me, how do you motivate an unmotivated person? I fire him. But anyway, and I did say that. But the point is, it's not my job to motivate an unmotivated person. If you don't want to be here, leave. My job is to find motivated people and lead them. And you know what? Most people love that. They want to be on a team where they look left and right. They don't want to have to go around going, he's doing nothing, she's doing nothing, I'm doing all. That's not good. That's your job as a leader. So the culture, Matt, I don't believe in measuring it. I believe in being close enough to the business that you know. And when I traveled, that's why I did all that traveling, I would sit with not just the leaders, but people and have a dinner, an internal dinner, and talk about this stuff. And if people, here's where candor comes in. If it's not going right in a certain group, people would come. I've heard you say this. I'm telling you, it doesn't feel that way in this group.
Yeah, interesting. And was there anything along the way that maybe you do differently? You look back and you're like, oh, I wish I would handle that a little differently, or lessons you've learned since then that you could have applied earlier?
When I first got in leadership, I was 26, and they asked me to do it. I was like, I don't want to do that. I would make more money than I ever thought I'd make. My next thing is, where am I going to dinner? That was my big challenge every night. I was taking on 8 people at the time. And I'm like, why would I do that? And they said, well, we want you to because the style of leadership we had before this was not like this at all. It was very engineering-centric, measurement-centric, and we were doing really well. So I thought I was doing a great job. In fact, the results showed that. But then I went to that first startup, and I had 8 people. I was the second person in the whole company in sales, one in New York, one in California. And the results were good. I was killing myself. And a guy said to me, who didn't work for me, he said, you work really hard. I said, yeah, thanks. He goes, your guys don't. You understand that they're expecting you to do key parts of the job. They're in the bar at 5 o'clock. They're doing whatever they want. And what I'd fallen into is if they get me close enough, I'll do it. I knew I could sell it. And then I realized when we were on presentations, I'm talking, not them. They're like, so I'm not teaching them to fish.
Right.
And so I'm never going to get a bigger job because if I have to physically be there. And I realized it wasn't about not working harder. It's what am I teaching these people? Why did I have to do that? Because I didn't demand that they do the whole job.
So when did you come to that realization? Somebody brought it to your attention.
Somebody brought it to my attention about 2 years into my startup, which would have been 84.
Someone told you the truth.
Told me the truth.
Mine for the truth. You talk about the truth, and I say this all the time. If you're not managing the truth, the truth will manage you right out the door.
Let me tell you a story about it at Notre Dame, a true thing that changed my life. I went to Notre Dame as an insecure kid, public school kid. I get there, everybody had advanced placement. I never heard of it. I'm like, woo, how's this going? So for 2 years, I was cooler than them because they all went to boys' school. So I can make it work, right? And I got grades almost as good as them without working so hard. That was my thing. That was my thing. And I got in an argument with a guy, and I buried him. I thought he was going to cry. And the RA on the floor, the resident assistant, said, Tom, do you think you won that argument? I'm like, did I win? The guy's over here in a ball. And he said, what was his point? I said, I don't know. He said, I know you don't. You never do. You don't listen to anything, Tom. You are, I say, I was a classic New Yorker. Just be loud and don't back down. Yeah. And it shocked me. And I was on a wrestling scholarship, so I was angry, but I went for a run and I went, he's right. And then I went back to tell him he's right. And he said, let me give you another. You get as good grades as these kids, but you don't work as hard. He said, do you think you're going to grad school? I said, well, I may. He said, no, you won't. What are you going to put on the application? I did almost as good, but I didn't work hard. He said, the reality in your life is you're afraid to go for it. You're afraid that if you really put everything into it, you won't do any better. That's the fact. And he walked away. Changed my life.
This was an RA in the dorm.
Yeah, so he's a senior. I'm a sophomore.
Okay.
Never talked to him before.
Have you talked to him since?
I went back and thanked him years later. Years later, I connected with him and thanked him.
So how can leaders intentionally, I say this, if I was a head coach again tomorrow, I'd assign a role of somebody's title to be truth teller. And you could come to me whenever you want to tell me what's on your mind.
This is why candor became so important to me.
How'd you create candor in a company to eliminate the fear of somebody, oh yeah, I can tell, I'll tell Tom, and then all of a sudden you don't react well and it shuts down the whole.
The key is it has to react well. I had a guy come to me in the early days of NetApp and he goes, I think we should be advertising the Super Bowl. I said, what does that cost? I don't know. You don't know? Oh, okay. It's about 8.5 million at that time for 30 seconds. What's our marketing budget? I don't know. Well, it's 10. So would you spend 8.5 million for 30 seconds and leave $1.5 million for everybody else for the rest of the year? No, I said, I wouldn't either. And I said, look, I'm not trying to be hard on you, but if you're going to come in here, this is not about dumping stuff on me. I want suggestions, but these are not hard questions I just asked you. Think through. So when you come here, we can have a quality conversation.
Yeah.
He hit me with another idea that was of something else he would solve. So he wasn't knocked backward. And I thought about it, and I always believe the best ideas, if they come up with it, it's 100% better than if you assign it. I think we could do this. And I said, how many people would that take? I probably could do it with 3 people. You do it, I said, let's do it for 6 months. I want you to come back to me and tell me how I'd measure success in 6 months. And if I agree with that and you agree with that, we'll send you off on that, and in 6 months we'll reassess. I had more great things happen in our company by people taking the ball like that. So he goes, tells other people, how did it go?
Right.
It went fine. You hit the key point. You can't come down on somebody. They don't know. You always say no stupid question. You go, what kind of question is that? That's it. Actually, I had somebody do that to me early in my career. Ask anything you want. I asked them, that's what you're asking?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
And then just to wrap things up, your goal setting.
Yeah.
So you have a plan, kind of a strategy with goal setting. Explain that.
Yeah, so when I was at Stanford, they did a study from Yale where they said 90% of high-performance people have time-bound measurable goals, written. Less than 10% of people have that. I was like, I don't have that. Meaning it for yourself. Your company gives you goals. So I came up with a system that changed my life, changed the life of many people. I put it out on Forbes.com. I think it had 250,000 views in 4 days, and it's been used by many people to do it. So you can go look for it if you want, but keep it simple. I gave myself 3 personal and 3 professional goals. First, I did 6 months. I did nothing for 90 days. So I guess 90 days is the number, because 6 months seems like I could do it later. 90 days, what am I going to do in 90 after I've done 60, 30? What am I going to do tonight to prepare for this week? And it drove my behavior. So personal is harder. I do personal first because you're not used to that. Remember, it has to be measurable. I'm a good person, not a goal. I'm going to lose weight, not a goal. First one I ever did, and I don't talk about personal goals to other people because at the time, because you don't want to prove to them you can make goals. It's about you, raising your view of yourself. I started thinking about Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. They don't seem to have a top on what they can do. I do. I did. Most people I knew did. My parents were happy I had a job. It wasn't that. So, 3 things that you're going to do that will make you feel good about yourself. That was the question. The question is the key. What makes you feel good about you? So that's a very personal thing. When the first thing I did was I wasn't working out because of all that travel. So I put treadmill 30 minutes 3 times a week. Measurable, time-bound. So you put that aside. There's some very personal things that happened later on when my dad got sick and stuff. He couldn't communicate. And I made it a goal to talk to him 3 times a week for 45 minutes. And when he passed, that really meant a lot to me. And I almost was one of those things I wanted to avoid. But I'm telling you, what makes you feel good about you? And you can change it every 90 days. But by definition, if you do it, you walk in a room different. People react to you different when you feel good about yourself. Right. And the second piece was, in business, what am I going to do to make an impact? I'm not here to fit in. What are you going to do to make an impact? And then I would review that with my boss, who was the CEO, and the guy who ran sales working for me, so that they could say, yes, those are great. I remember one time in sales, the guy said, I was going to go to China to help. And he said, I wouldn't do that. Why is that? We've had 4 execs there in the list. Of course they want you there, but how about, can I suggest you go to 4 cities that you have not been? Because they're smaller. It was like Portland, Kansas City, Albuquerque, and that makes a much bigger impact in that. So, but now I have my 6. I put it aside for 1 day, and then I read it out loud. Each one I say, if I do that, will I be proud of myself? I realized that I was living my life, and I realized this is Stanford also, to make other people proud of me. Parents, whatever. At the end of the day, when you look back at your life, the only thing you're going to think about is, am I proud of the life I lived? And so that, I said, am I proud of myself? And let's go back to that 30 minutes. I moved it to 35. If you go to 7 days, 2 hours, 1 day, oh, geez.
Treadmill,
Here. Came up with that system. Well, when I got to 20 minutes, I wanted to quit. When I got to 30, I pushed through to 35. And now, the first time I did it, I hit 4 out of 6. And I was ecstatic. It sounds crazy, you could miss a goal, but now I knew I was driving my own mission. And I added 2 things that stopped that. Number 1, well, the first one is I made an appointment with myself that I would not break. Unless Matt calls in, someone calls in and says, can you be here today at 7 instead of 9? Yes. But if you say, I have an appointment, Tom, it's really critical, I'll do it. No, that's okay. How about 10:30? But my normal reaction was yes. And so I said to myself, I'm just going to, these are things I'm going to make. And what happened on the next one, I hit 6 out of 6. and I started to lift what I believe I could do. And my career arc went straight up. I had a guy who was an original salesman at NetApp do that. He ended up succeeding me as president, which Don Valentine was our chairman of the board, most famous venture capitalist ever. He says, first time in Silicon Valley history he's ever seen a guy. Anyway, multiple people, because you're driving your own behavior and you're constantly looking at how I can improve.
Yeah. Well, we could go on and on, Tom.
Yeah.
I love your passion for leadership, and you continue to share your lessons to people, young people, especially through the Mendoza School of Business. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Jane,
Yeah, it's great.
Matt, great.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.